remember during Laura's wedding when I found out I'd lost my flower basket? I was just starting up the aisle and it was too late to go back and try and find it. Well, don't worry, everything turned out all right. But I sure hope you were paying attention, because in a little while, you're going to have to help me remember the 4 things I was supposed to do when I walked up the aisle. After I looked around for my mom and couldn't find her, I really began to get worried. I can't be a flower girl, I said to myself, if I don't have any flowers. But then all of a sudden, I heard somebody whispering my name. Cricket, said a voice. Cricket, over here. And who do you think it was? If you said my mom, you got it right. But where is she, I said to myself. And then I saw her. She was standing at the end of a row of people. And picture this, she had my flower basket. I kept on walking, and pretty soon I was right next to her. Then my mom held out the basket, and I took it. Phew, I said to myself, am I lucky or what? And then I started dropping the rose petals in front of me. Well, pretty soon we were at the altar, and I moved over with the bridesmaids. I had a great view of everything that went on, but the only thing I could think about was walking back down the aisle, because everybody would be looking at me again, and I sure didn't want to make a mistake, so I tried to remember the 4 things I was supposed to do. Why don't you help me? The first thing was about the way I walked. Do you remember what it was? That's right, I was supposed to take slow steps. And the reason I had to take slow steps was so I wouldn't what? So I wouldn't trip over my dress. Ooh, that would be awful. Now what was the 3rd thing I had to remember? I wasn't supposed to look at anybody in the audience. But where was I supposed to look? Straight ahead. You guessed it. That's so I wouldn't get even more nervous if I saw somebody I knew. Like my little brother Corky, for instance. Because he'd probably make me do the last thing I wasn't supposed to do. I bet you remember that one. Right, I wasn't supposed to giggle. Well, you know me, that was going to be the hardest one of all. And then the ceremony was almost over. The groom kissed the bride, and they turned around and started to walk down the steps. That was my cue, because I was going to be next in line. So I waited till they were at the bottom of the steps, and then I started down too. But my dress was so long, guess what? I almost tripped over it. Phew, I said to myself, that was close. I hope nothing else goes wrong. Well, I made it about halfway down the aisle with no problem. But people were taking pictures again, and everybody was smiling, and some of them were crying and smiling. And then all of a sudden, I heard a voice say, Cricket, look at me. Only it wasn't my mom this time. It was my little brother, Corky. I won't look, I said to myself. I won't. But then I was right next to Corky, and picture this. He made a silly face at me and said, Hiya, Cricket. And then I felt a giggle starting, and then a laugh. And then I said, oh no, I'm gonna embarrass myself. But by then, we were at the front door, and everybody was laughing, and crying too, of course, and hugging each other and throwing rice. And then my mom was beside me. Did I do a good job, I asked her. You did a wonderful job, said my mom. Oh, good, I said. Mom, you know what? What, said my mom. I think this is the last wedding I'm ever going to. Until I get married. After the wedding, there was a big party called a reception. I got to stand in line with Laura and her family and shake everybody's hand. Phew, that was a lot of handshaking. Let's see how much handshaking you can do. Every time I sing howdy do, you shake my hand and say howdy do back. I've come to the wedding, said the ladybug, howdy do. I've come to the wedding, said the ladybug, howdy do. I've come to the wedding, said the ladybug, to give the bride a big old hug, howdy do, howdy do, howdy do. I've come to the wedding, said the Jersey cow, howdy do. I've come to the wedding, said the Jersey cow, howdy do. I've come to the wedding, the wedding to the little green snake, howdy do. I've come to the wedding to the little green snake, howdy do. I've come to the wedding to the little green snake to eat up all your wedding cake, howdy do. Howdy do, howdy do. At the reception, I saw all the wonderful wedding gifts that Laura got. I know a very special story about a wedding gift, and I'd like you to help me tell it. What makes this story extra special is that all your friends can be in it. Just say the name of one of your friends whenever you hear the sound. And don't forget to use your own name, too. Here goes. Once upon a time, there was a wizard named... He wanted to give a special gift to a princess called... Because she was going to marry a handsome prince whose name was... So the wizard thought, and then he said, I know, I shall give her a white unicorn. So the wizard went to see an elf about a unicorn. I'll help you find a unicorn, said the elf. But first you must guess my name. All right, said the wizard. Is your name? No, said the elf, it is not. Then is your name? Asked the wizard. Wrong again, said the little elf. Then the wizard thought and said, could your name possibly be? Yes, it is, shouted the elf. So he showed the wizard where the unicorns lived, and the wizard gave one to the princess. Oh, said the princess, what a wonderful unicorn. I shall name him. And so she did, and the princess and the prince were married and lived happily ever after. And that is the end of the story made up by Cricket and... My cousin Laura married a man who was a lot like her. They both have brown hair, they both smile a lot, and they both like to read and play tennis. But I know a song about some married people who weren't alike at all. In fact, they were opposites. That means they were as different as could be. Listen and see if you can answer my questions about opposites. Jack Sprat was very fat, his wife was very thin. Fat and thin are opposites, so that's where we'll begin. What word is the opposite of fat? Thin is the opposite of fat. Now try this one. Jack Sprat was very short, his wife was very tall. Short and tall are opposites, they're not alike at all. What word is the opposite of short? The answer to that one is tall. Now here's another one. Jack Sprat was very fast, his wife was very slow. Fast and slow are opposites, let's see how much you know. What word is the opposite of fast? The answer to that one is slow. Now Jack, he hardly ever smiled, his wife was full of laughter, but they loved each other so, they were happy ever after. Storybook adventures, they're the greatest kind. There's no end to all the fun you'll find. You can have adventures and still be safe at home with a storybook adventure of your own. Once upon a time, there was a girl named Lady Diana who was in love with a prince named Chuck. Chuck really loved Diana too, so one day they decided to get married. First, said Chuck, I must go home and tell my mom and dad, the king and queen. And I will tell my mother, said Diana. Poor Diana couldn't tell her father, though, because a long time ago, he went on a business trip to Hawaii and never returned. Goodbye, darling, said Chuck to Diana. I'll see you soon. Goodbye, dearest, said Diana to Chuck. I sure hope so. So Chuck went back to his own castle, and Diana started getting her wedding dress ready. Her mother, the Duchess, helped her make it. And was it ever gorgeous or what? It was made of beautiful white satin and had a lovely lavender lace trim. Only problem was, Diana used up all her material on the gown and didn't have any left for a veil. Oh, what shall I do now? She exclaimed. Be still, my child, said her mother. And then the Duchess opened a trunk and took out the most gorgeous bridal veil you've ever seen. And guess what? It was white and lavender too. This was the veil I wore at my wedding, said the Duchess. Try it on. And so Diana did, and it fit perfectly. You look marvelous, darling, said the Duchess. But picture this. Poor Diana started to cry. What's the matter? Asked the Duchess. Oh, if only, said Diana, my daddy were here to see me get married. Never fear, my child, said her mother. Someday he will return. So then Diana got everything ready for the trip to Prince Chuck's castle. The Duchess couldn't go till the day of the wedding, so she sent along a maid instead. But what the Duchess didn't know, and neither did Diana, was that the maid was a wicked witch in disguise, and she was in love with the prince too. So Princess Diana and the maid, who was really a witch, set off on their journey. Pretty soon they arrived at the castle, and Chuck ran outside to meet them. But before he could say, I love you even once, the wicked witch revealed herself. She pointed a long, bony finger at Diana and said, No more a lady's life for thee. From now on a servant girl you shall be. And then she turned to Chuck and said, Never shall Diana be your bride. On the day of your wedding, I shall be by your side. And then the witch snapped her fingers, and the spell was cast. Chuck gazed into the eyes of the witch and said, Darling, I've missed you so much. And the wicked witch replied, No more than I have missed you, my dearest. Then she turned to Diana and ordered her to pick up her bags. And that's just what Diana did, because she thought she was nothing but a servant girl now. Well, the days went by, and all the while Prince Chuck was under the witch's spell, and so was Princess Diana. They hardly ever saw each other. And when they did, of course they never said a word. Though the little servant girl would always sigh when she saw the prince and say to herself, Maybe someday my prince will come. And Prince Chuck would always stop a moment and wonder, Haven't I seen her somewhere before? Then pretty soon, it was the day of the wedding. Everybody came from miles around, and when the Duchess arrived and asked to see her daughter, a butler came back and said, I'm sorry, madame, but the princess wishes to see no one. I wonder how come, said the Duchess to herself, and she took her place in the front row of the church. And then it was time for the ceremony to begin. First the prince came down the aisle with his best man, and then the bride came down the aisle with her maid of honor. Everybody oohed and awed and said how lovely she was and how beautiful her wedding gown looked. Can you believe it? That witch was not only going to marry Diana's prince, she was even wearing Diana's wedding gown. And of course Diana's bridal veil covered her face, so not even the Duchess could tell she really wasn't her daughter. And Diana herself, who was sitting in the very last row of all, still had no idea what was going on. Then the bishop said to Prince Chuck, Do you take Lady Diana to be your wife forever and ever and ever? And of course Chuck said, I do. And then the bishop said to the wicked witch, Do you take Prince Chuck to be your husband forever and ever and ever? But before the witch could say, I do, who do you think came rushing through the front door of the church? You guessed it, Princess Diana's long-lost father, the Duke. Wait, he commanded, I must kiss my daughter before she's wed. And the Duke bounded up the aisle, lifted the bride's veil and cried, This is not the daughter I left many years ago. And with those words, the evil spell was broken. Then the real Lady Diana stood up and shouted, You are right, father dear. I am your only daughter, and she is a witch. Prince Chuck awoke at that moment too, and when he saw the witch standing beside him, he cried, Guards, take her away. And then Lady Diana came down the aisle and kissed her father on the cheek. The bishop said his speech all over again, and Chuck said I do, and so did Diana. Well, by that time, everybody in the whole church was crying. Everybody except Diana and Chuck. They weren't crying because they knew they were going to live happily ever after. And they did, too. I just love happy endings, don't you? And guess what? This is the end of the wedding. Unless you want to turn my tape over, and then I'll be talking to ya.